telephoto, I'd suggest starting at least f8 and for group pictures, and that's because a telephoto, you know, your little variance of like 2.8 is a lot blurrier than 2.8 on your 35 millimeter. We're going to talk about lens choices a little bit later, and I'll show you some other examples, but basically, and if you're on a wider lens, I would say 5.6 or higher for a group picture. I was watching something on Creative Live with a photographer I really admire. Her name is Susan Stripling, and she was saying she's at f4 all the time, and I don't know how, like, she gets amazing results, but I just don't want, like, I can't line everybody's eyes up and stuff. It's just, there's too much of a difference. I want to make sure people are in focus for a lot of those shots. So I just wanted to point out, guys, posing guys, is this was my most recent wedding that I shot. This is straight out of the camera. And, you know, they were like, oh, let's just get out on the balcony because the wedding hadn't started yet. So sometimes you've got really limited options to try to cram everybody in. And so I took a picture, like this is almost like my test the exposure picture. And then I dropped down and I looked up at them and did that little technique. And it looks a lot better, doesn't it? So this is before, this is after. Guys, even more than women, it's the rock star look. It's whatever. It gives guys a little bit more of a masculine feel if you get down and you shoot up at them. Just a little rule of thumb. I don't really pose kids either, period. Like I don't do that kind of photography. I know some people do, and that's totally cool. But with kids, I just find it too hard. So I'm going to tell you how to get the best out of them. But yeah, so their daughter was, you know, she was kind of had a little bit of sugar. So, you know, I had them basically, I was like, everybody look at her, everybody look at daddy, everybody look at mommy, you know, and then have them look around. They start giggling around. It's just one technique you could do. Just everybody look at so-and-so. And sometimes when people look, they'll point, and I'll say, everybody look just with your smiles. You know, I have a really good friend who's a very shy photographer. So, you know, I know a lot of people, like, you know, when they get nervous or they get shy, this is their face. So she really, though, you would never know it when she's shooting people. She still talks constantly while she's shooting. You know, you just kind of got to figure out what works for you, and the more you practice, the better it will be. So I'll sometimes get, like, the adults in, or, like, mom and dad will be kissing, and then I say, okay, kids, run toward the camera. Okay, kids, I want you to goof around and run in a circle around mommy and daddy. And that works every time, too. You want them, like, sometimes they've been hopped up on sugar to bribe them into putting on whatever outfit for the portrait session. So you want to get them to do stuff, right? So unruly crowds, we'll talk about handling that. So this is my second photographer. This is a wedding I shot back in 2009. And I've had hundreds of people behind me before. This is just a picture I happen to have. So he's trying to get the picture, but so is everybody else. And what ends up happening is everybody will look in different directions. So I will say, I'll shout it out. I'll try to be as cheerfully dictatorial as possible with people. I'm like, okay, everybody, I want to tell you all, like there's like 50 people about to be in different combinations of family portraits. And I do this as well for, like if it's a family reunion, I sometimes get asked, oh, can you take family portraits for a family reunion coming up? There'll be like large groups of several different groups of families. And I'm like, okay, everybody, when I want you all to take a look behind me. Some people come up behind me, actually. I need you to all fake it. Thank you. So when people are behind me, I turn around with my camera and I go, hey, guys. This is especially true with kids. I'm like, okay, hey, guys. I know you're going to take pictures. No worries at all, because there's just absolutely nothing I could do to control 100 people. They're just, and you don't want to, they're going to remember that, too. Well, that photographer at so-and-so's wedding, what a bitch. So anyway, I'm like, okay, guys. So I'm going to take the picture. Then when I'm done, I'm going to turn around and it's your turn, because otherwise everybody's going to look. So you think that this would make everybody behave. So what ends up happening is, I want you guys to do that, is I take the picture, the very first one, and there's people behind me, and then I look at the back of the camera, and without even looking behind, I know somebody's going to look in the direction of somebody who's raised their, because they might even just have their camera ready. Like, you can't tell if there's a picture being taken. Once your camera's down, I turn around, and I'll cheerfully shame whoever took the picture, because I can tell, somebody over here took a picture, I can tell. And then I say it in a cheerful way, and usually they're like, oh, and I make it sound, like I'm not upset about it, and you try to get that established, and sometimes they'll just walk away and stop taking pictures altogether. So that's one way that you can kind of cheerfully, yes, Yeah, he was asking, do I ever ask families not to bring cameras? And no, I think that's up to the bride and groom. It's not, I don't want to impose that, but it is lovely when the couple has an unplugged wedding. That's what they call it, an unplugged wedding, where people don't bring the cameras. Oh, it's so lovely. But yeah, no, that's a good question. So let's pretend you guys are parents. I'm just going to show the next slide. So this is what happens when, look at the camera, look at the camera. Well, where are the kids going to look? They're going to look toward mom. Yeah. So I'm going to do this. So what I do is I look behind everybody and I say, okay, if you are going to try to get the kids to look at you, we're not going to pose the kids, first of all. We're just going to have them stand there and hope that they look at me. Then let's pretend I'm down. I try to be at eye level. You can see I'm at eye level with the kids. And then I will sometimes say to the parents, because sometimes somebody's way over there going, look at the camera, Jimmy, look at the camera. Oh, look over here. So I might say, if you're the mom, I might say, hey, you know what, while you're doing that, can you just touch me while you're doing that? And I tell everybody, I want your cameras straight down, and I am a little bit more addicted. I'm like, okay, everybody, I need you to put your cameras right down because the kids are going to look at you. And I'm really like, I need you to. When you say, I need you to do this, most times people will listen. And you still do it in a way that most people seem to not hate me when I do that. And I still let them get their pictures. Another time I was taking pictures of a group. This was a family portrait session. And the little baby just like, anytime that they picked her up, she'd kind of throw a temper tantrum. Yeah, she's about 2. So I said, you know what, guys? I'm going to get you guys all into position, and then I want the person on the end to run and grab her and bring her up and bring her to the picture. And that's what happened. That's how we got the picture. Let her run around. Like, don't have the kid, at that age especially, like, if I'm trying to get everybody into position while she's being held, she's just going to scream. This is the way it is. Anybody with you guys, anybody here have kids? Probably a lot of you. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So, but you know what? I do like this picture, though. I think it's funny. Okay, so I'll just show you just a couple of other things just for ideas. This is more, I wanted them to look like they didn't have heads. So, you know, if you're doing, this is good for fashion, too. You know, I haven't done a lot of fashion posing with groups, but if you are more of a fashion photographer, you know, you can there's a lot of different ideas out there. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples. So for this one, I like, my go-to thing is check somebody out and that person ignore them, and it usually makes people laugh. So I told the girls on the one side to check the one hot guy out, and the girls on the other side to check the other hot guy out, who really did have their shirts off. I didn't, tell them to. And we did call them, they were watching the portrait session, and we're like, hey, and I just called them hot guys. I didn't ask for their name. I'm like, hey, hot guys, come on in the picture. You want to come in the picture? And then I said, okay, girls, you're going to look at each of the hot guys. Hot guys, you're too hot for them. So that's what they did, and that's how that picture was taken. And then this surfer, we did the same thing. They wanted to just pose with a surfer, so the surfer was standing here and there. And I was like, okay, so let's do something a little bit different. And again, I didn't get to know his name. I just called him, okay, so hot guy, hot surfer. I'm going to have you're going to look away from them. You're way too hot for them, and that's what made them laugh. I'm like, you're just going to check him out. He's way too hot for you. And I need them behind the surfboard to do it. So that's like a nice go-to thing is you're too hot for them. Always seems to make people laugh, and it, I don't know, works for pictures. How's everybody for groups so far? We're going to get into documentary family portrait style stuff in a few more slides, but I just wanted to, touch base on the group stuff. Did people pick up stuff that they hadn't tried before? Okay, good. So it's all in the nose with couples. I'm going to show you a bunch of different pictures, and the only instruction I gave was I want you to either touch noses, or I want you to trace your nose along the side of her cheek, or vice versa. And that little trace and nose thing means that they're not kissing. So let me see, do I have a kiss picture? I have a kiss picture coming up, and it's not a bad picture. Couples want to kiss. Same with mom and dad if you're doing a family portrait session. But so this is just him rubbing his nose along her cheek. This is him rubbing his nose along her forehead. Very different picture, right? Arms around the waist is another instruction that I used to not give. So these guys are standing like this, and it just doesn't look as good. Put both arms around each other's waist. And if there's a height difference, and she puts her arms up here, it sometimes will block his face or her face, or, it depends on the height difference. If she puts her arms under him, it just looks a lot better. And it's a more relaxed pose. It gets them in together. So arms around waist. I don't mind this, though. I just put this in as an example that I don't mind it. And then, he was making her giggle. Super cute picture. And then this is just, they were rubbing noses. And then 1 second after I took this exposure, he licked her, so then it was this is like, you know, another example. Just touch noses. It's like, so when I have a couple together and they don't know what to do, I give them that one instruction, and it just relaxes them. And especially the guys, a lot of the guys really are just uncomfortable. So when they're in these kind of pictures, and this I put in because I had her just rubbing her forehead. I want their skin to touch somewhere on their face. What happens sometimes is they'll block the other person's face, so I'll just say, hey, that looks great. Now let's have you come to the other side of her. You know, I'll just kind of give gentle instructions. And this is wine glasses out at the wedding venue that were on the table that I used to make that bokeh. And that's where there's a huge height difference. And I did want to say, like, this is back before I started telling people to put their arms around each other's waist. Do you think it would have been a better picture, or do you like her arms down? At least he's kind of grabbed her. Yeah, I think there's a nice enough height difference. And there's like this, I love this couple. They're so cute. I do let people kiss, but do you agree it looks better when they're not kissing and a lot more intimate? So I try, you know, I don't tell people to kiss. Sometimes I will if I'm just like, you know, just kiss so that they kind of feel like, sometimes if they just got married, they want to make out, you know, so they're alone time. And then I do separate couples sometimes. And this is where I had her in the front, and I gave her the instruction, she's too hot for him, and it made them laugh. And I like this picture way better than if she had been posing. And then I do sometimes do the whole stylized, you know, whatever, same stuff. What if you're a little shorter than your subjects, and then your subjects, there's a height difference as well. And I did have one groom who was 6'7", and she was like 5'4", or something like that. So I had her stand on a chair, and like we did like the American Gothic style stuff. Like we joked around with it. They're used to their own height difference. And I do try to be at eye level with the person I'm shooting, or down, or like, you know, not my eye level, but sometimes you just can't avoid it. Where it comes in, we're going to talk about lens choices in a few slides, and I would say that using like an 80 to 200 brings that compression in, and I'll show you some examples, and we'll play a little video as well, and that can also reduce the height difference.
What about during the ceremony?
Oh, during the ceremony, just gotta take the picture, whatever, yeah. During the ceremony, I got no control. I know, and yeah, I would just say, I wouldn't use a step ladder, and I obviously wouldn't stand up on pews or anything like that, but yeah, you know, yeah, that's an easy way to get kicked out, but yeah, I would just shoot it at my own whatever height. So you know what, usually at weddings, during the ceremony, I'm down in the main aisle pretty low anyway. Like I'm down on the ground. I like the perspective of getting down and looking up. I once heard from a photographer that you can tell a lazy photographer when they shoot at their eye level. And you know, it's true that it's not that hard to get down, and you know, I'm always getting down on the ground. So general rules of thumb, I usually, for documentary family pictures, I'm going to show you a few pictures, is my f-stop sometimes controls the story. And that's something that I heard once from a photojournalist, and I think it's really true. If you think about, you know, a wide f-stop, like 2.8, when you're really letting everything in the background go blurry, that tells a different story than if you're shooting at f22. And sometimes f22 is where, you know, the story is a whole bunch of different people, and sometimes f2.8 is just a story of the emotion that's going on with that one person. And with kids, I like to kind of isolate them, and I like to shoot with usually my 85 lens. Sometimes if they're really squirrely, I'm 35 lens, or 24 to 70, that kind of thing. And if I can get away with it, I'm with my 70 to 200, because I really like that lens, and I'll show you why in a little bit too. So the light, that position is what's important to the viewer's eye, you know, when you're trying to tell story. So if the light, if I'm not standing in the light, like I'm in the shadows, your eye's not going to go to me in a photo that's not fixed up, right? So what do you do with a kid who wants to, you know, they're playing in poo light indoors, right? So what I'll be showing you some different things I do. So, you know, before I move on, the expression is usually conveyed in the eyes, nose, hands, mouth. Sometimes if a kid's playing with a toy, or a person showing you what they do, like if you're taking a picture of a photographer, sometimes the emotion or the story is in how they're holding their camera. Are they tense? Are they nervous? Are they loose with it? You know, what's going on with their feet? So I'm going to walk you through just a few pictures I took of this adorable little girl. I don't think she was quite 2 yet. I think she was about 18 months, something like that. And she basically gave me a tour of her house. She's a very shy girl, and we did do some pictures with the parents a little bit later. So I just basically let her, she just wanted me to show me stuff. So there's her standing in open shade on her balcony, and she was like, yes, and my doll, and she's telling me about her doll, and she's being really contemplative. And then she's like, oh, follow me up the stairs. So luckily, the stairs were in nice light. I mean, I just would have taken the picture and bumped the ISO up if it wasn't. There's her going up the stairs a little bit more. I'll be showing you some more slides too, but I really like to make triangles in my compositions. So if I'm going to tilt, I like to make a triangle with that tilt. Then here's where basically I just wanted to do something arty. So on the way to her bedroom, or one of the rooms she was going to show me, she was like I think she's dragging her doll. So that was just an arty picture I took. But then basically she turned her head and she was playing with toys in the shadow. And I was like, oh, it's not really going to work. And there's this beautiful window light. So I basically pretend the window light's behind me. I sat, because I'm always at eye level with children. And sometimes I'm right on the ground. Sometimes but I'm sitting, I'm squatting. I work my buns out all the time. I do a lot of squats when I work. It's great. So I just sat there and I just waited. And any kid, as long as you leave them alone and you're not going, hey, look, the weirder you act, the less interested they are in you. Let them be they're the center of attention, not you. So I did have to learn that the hard way because I don't have children. Because I would go, being all funky and so I just kind of lay back. She was used to me by that point, and she turned around and wanted to look at me, and then she showed the toys. So I sat knowing that I was ignoring her as she was playing with her toys. I didn't get around into the dark, and it wasn't going to be a good picture. Instead, I waited until she moved into my light, and I knew for a fact she would. She started showing me each toy she had and telling me little stories and stuff like that, and I just kind of shot her in her bedroom. This is her bed and her dresser, so she's right in between them. And then she was rolling on the floor, and she started to get more expressive. And then her mom came in the room and said, well, let's see how tall you are, So it's just the same kind of window light, but she's such a cutie. And then we went down to the beach, and I know we don't all have the luxury of being able to get babies in the water. Even on the West Coast, our water doesn't warm up that much. But yeah, so we did this, and then she got a little bit more daring. They put a little tutu on her, and she went running around the beach with the tutu, which is awesome. And then she started playing in the sand. And this to me is quite amazing. So, I took some pictures where she was the focus. I don't really care about them being in focus. They told me they wanted completely kind of artsy. They didn't want a typical family picture. So I knew they wouldn't mind. And then she started playing in the sand. And then she started playing more in the sand. And then this is one of my favorite pictures because, then he took her back into the ocean to clean all the sand. Not many people let your kid play in the sand like that. But anyway, then this is just another kid showing me her toys. And she was a lot more animated and happy. So basically, I just stayed in the same spot, and then she just paraded her toys in front of me. And she was a little bit more hyper with it. But look at her. She's like, my toys. But it looks like I could have posed her. The second if I told her to look at my camera or told her anything about my camera, it's game over. She's, so then this picture, a lot of times, sometimes the parents will give too many instructions, and they're like, oh, kiss her, da, 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 and it makes the kids cry. Have you guys had this happen to you? So basically, he was kind of showing off a little bit, and I think they'd had a little bit of sugar too, and I think their parents were always prompting them to kiss, so I didn't actually have to do any prompting at all. He was reading her a story, and then because I was paying so much attention to them, taking the picture, he just went and kissed her. I mean, you may want to say, oh, kiss your sister, but don't force it, because as soon as you force it, it's game over. And I got some really cute ones of him reading his story to his sister. Family portraits, I usually say, look, I'm going to keep this really relaxed. I'll talk to the mom before I even kind of meet the kids. And I'm like, hey, let's do a laid back thing. We'll take a few pictures of you guys looking at the camera. But let's, while the kids are having fun and stuff, let's just let them have fun. And you'll get some pictures like what you've seen on my website. I wanted to talk a little bit more about triangles and just show you what I meant. So I shot this straight on. It's the same trick, pot lights at a hotel. And then when I turn the camera, there are implied triangles, right? They're not real triangles, but they're implied in the negative space. And I'm always looking for triangles. Which picture do you like better, this one or this one? This one? Yeah, a lot of people, it's almost like the rule of thirds. So, things in threes. Triangles are threes. And I think we're just hardwired, and I think there is a lot of science to this. If you watch any of those TED Talks about art, a lot of them talk about threes, that three is like the perfect thing in nature, and that symmetry is not as beautiful to us as asymmetry, and that things in triangles always just look better. So always look for triangles. So there's a triangle in the negative space and the positive space here. Here, I had them kind of squished up, and I really like the reflection, and I thought, but I really want to be able to see him in the reflection too. So I moved them and created a triangle where I can see him in the reflection and her in the reflection. And do you like that a little bit better than the cuddly shot? And they were good about the fashion stuff. Some couples are not into the fashion stuff, and that's totally fine. So a little bit more comp. I just wanted to mention about symmetry. As I was saying, I've judged a lot of contests, and at different levels, like some amateur contests, some like, you know, international stuff, like the International Society of Professional Wedding Photographers, where it's like, you know, really high-end contests. And one of the things I find is that if there's not symmetry on both sides, a centered composition just really doesn't work most of the time. Most of the time. Every rule is meant to be broken, right? So unless it's exactly the same on either side, all sides of them, it just won't work. And you can see they made a triangle as well. Yeah? Yeah, you know what? It was pretty windy there. So that was natural, but sometimes I'll get somebody to, like a helper, to throw up her veil and then like run out of the picture. I do that too, yeah. This was my first wedding. Oh, it was my second wedding, sorry. My first wedding, I got paid $75 and I was hired for just the ceremony. So this is my second wedding, which was like, you know, I did the portraits and stuff like that. And so I was really into my like wide angle lens. This is like a fisheye, which I wouldn't use for that skinny thing because it's just too much distortion. So I put them in the center. It's a little bit like, because the breakwater, it's not completely asymmetrical over, but just the way that I did it, you can get away with a centered composition. And it's also got a triangle. So triangle in the middle works too. So eliminating clutter, what you can also do is your lens choice. Here's an example of this couple. He had been involved in building the building over to the left. We did take some other pictures showing a little bit more of the building. This is downtown Edmonton, and a wedding I just shot this summer with Gwen, who's here. And so this was like what the street looked like. They wanted a picture on the street with the building in, and then I was like, and so I got a little lower, and most of the cars are out of the picture. It's a lot better, right? And sometimes people, like, it's kind of fashionable right now to make people little. I do that, but I also like to zoom in, get close. Like, I don't just want to take little, because that might go out of vogue in a bit. You never know, right? But I find the negative space, you see there's a triangle in a negative space as well. There's triangles everywhere in this whole thing. And another method is, of course, using compression. Now, the other thing that I'm doing as well is I'm shooting with an 85mm lens, which has really nice compression. It's bringing the background up a lot closer to Kelsey. I do have a 35mm lens. I'm going to get a little bit of a wider angle, and you'll notice that this does not have a lens hood, so this is going to allow a little bit more light in. And the other problem with me shooting at this little bit of a wider mode is that the trees are going to show up a little bit more than they will if I use my 85. My camera can only see what my lens can see, and when I focus straight onto Kelsey, all I've done is, and especially at 3.5, I'm going to even make it 2.8 and f400 now, and it's going to be even that much more of a blurry background, which is also called bokeh.